Okay, Jerry, we live, we going, we good.
Okay, I'm trying to get Bill in.
Okay, Jerry, we live, we going, we good.
Okay.
Okay, Jerry, we live, we going, we good.
I don't know what's wrong tonight. Okay. Hey,
What's going on?
this thing keep I'm getting double.
Okay, hit that X and the again on the
Can y'all hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm not getting a double sound.
I can hear you, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Jerry?
I hear you.
Hey,
We
can y'all
live.
hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
All right, I'm here.
We only got one picture, I'm the only one that I can see, well, I see Carlton, blank
Yeah,
screen.
everybody's on. Everybody's on.
Yeah, I can see you. I can see everybody except Carlton. Carlton, you got your camera on?
Oh,
You can't see me, Vern?
Now I see Carlton right now, yeah, I saw you, I just went, talk again, let me go back, yeah, I can see Carlton now.
Okay.
Okay, I see. Give me a minute, Jerry, give me 1 second. But I had to stop my screen so I can start all over again, okay?
All right.
Okay, go ahead, Jerry.
Again, good evening. I'm Jared McIntosh, and this is Community Conversation. We have with us host Bill Snow, who is the author from the Project to the Boardroom, Mr. Vernon Watson, who is the owner of WBQP TV, Fire Stick Roku, and YouTube channel. Carlton Mayers, who is the attorney at law, who will be addressing some of the issues that he's got going on this later in the week, on the 13th, I believe. Carlton, you want to talk about that a little bit before we get into it? You on mute, Carlton.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, hello everybody. Yeah, Carlton T. Mayers II, Esquire from Mayer Strategic Solutions, LLC. And what I do is my company works with communities around the country on reimagining public safety through a model of policing reform that I created called Community Empowerment-Centered Policing Reform, that essentially states that community members, especially from those zip codes with high levels of negative police interactions, that those are the people that have to be involved in, have to have knowledge of, and have to have at least 50% voting power over all police activities that are directly related to police event interactions. And that's how we're gonna support public safety by ensuring police accountability. And that's what I'll be doing in Delaware. I'm traveling out there this week to Wilmington, Delaware, as a speaker at an event that's going to have the families of Breonna Taylor, who we already know passed away at the hands of law enforcement unjustifiably in Louisville, Kentucky last year due to a no-knock warrant execution. Then there's also Jacob Blake's father is also going to be at the event. We also know Jacob Blake, this Kenosha, Wisconsin, was actually trying to intervene on a domestic violence dispute, and law enforcement showed up, saw him going toward his vehicle, and one officer came up behind him and shot him 7 times directly in his back on camera. Jacob Blake is now paralyzed from the waist down. However, that officer has got his job back. He's been reinstated with his pension and salary. And now he's back to patrolling the same streets that Jacob Blake, who he paralyzed, lives on. So talk about a messed up situation. So those family members, even though, you know, they have cases that have gone to civil court, some of them have won, like Breonna Taylor's mother and others. At the end of the day, these family members of the victims, they want to see long-term change. They don't want to see what happened to their family member happen to somebody else's family member. And so that's why I'm working with them. And this event that I'm speaking at this week is going to be, you know, one of the things I'm doing with the families to really start talking about what can we do now that we know that there's not going to be federal policing reform law that is comprehensive in addressing community police relations and police accountability. What do we do now also with the recent news on the ballot initiative in Minneapolis last week to essentially defund the Minneapolis Police Department by creating a brand new public safety division where they don't have a police chief and the police department is controlled by the local elected officials. I mean, now that ballot initiative was voted down by the community in double digits, right? So, you know, there's a lot of talk about how the defund movement has lost its steam or is losing its steam. And at the same time, we're also seeing a lack of action on the part of the federal government to do something about this issue that has been a long-term problem, especially for Black people or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color for quite some time. So what I do is I'm working with groups, like I said, like the families, on how we can, in the meantime, until the federal government figures things out, get some state and local policy reforms implemented, like on the books, passed in the law, and implemented, so that way we can start and continue to move this ball of reform that we saw move in a big way, I'll be honest, when President Obama was president, right? I think he did more on policing reform than any other president in US history. And so the fact that Biden was the vice president during that almost decade of Obama's presidency, you would think that Biden would be starting from at least where Obama left off, and it doesn't seem as if that's happening. So, like I said, there's a lot of question marks about what's going to happen with policing reform, and I'm just trying to work with those on the state and local level on what we can do to continue to move that ball forward. One last thing I want to say that I will be talking about at this event, you know, Reverend Al Sharpton is going to be present there, I think, via video, and National Action Network will be there in person. They're working with the families. One other thing I want to mention is that one of the families I'm directly working with is the family who's actually hosting this event, which is the family of Mr. Lyman Moses. He was an African-American young gentleman who was shot and killed by law enforcement unjustifiably while he was behind the wheel of his car, or of his mother's car, I should say, unarmed, and was not trying to physically harm law enforcement. They shot him on camera, body-worn camera footage, in the head. And you can find this video on YouTube. If you just go on YouTube and look up Lyman Moses, you will see the body-worn camera footage of the incident. It is public. So just wanted to say that for that case, there's an ongoing investigation. This happened back in February. There's still an investigation. The officers are on paid leave, so they're essentially on vacation. And there is no justice for his death at this point. And so I'm working with the families on how we can bring about some state and local reforms to prevent another family from having to deal with the tragedy that this family has to deal with in Wilmington, Delaware. Just understand This happened in Wilmington, Delaware in February of this year. That's the same time that Biden was president. And like he's doing today, spending his weekends in Delaware, usually in Wilmington, Delaware, if not Rehoboth Beach. So Biden obviously is aware of Mr. Moses' tragedy and has not said anything, and has also not really done anything, not even a pattern of practice investigation of the Newcastle County Police Department, which is what was requested by letter by NAACP Delaware State Chapter. And so, you know, I do believe that there's a mirroring, like a reflection, a parallel that exists with the way Biden is addressing policing reform on a national scale compared to the way he's addressing it back in his own backyard in Delaware. So, you know, just something to be aware of. But this event is going to be talking about what needs to happen going forward. And please do, if you're able to come out to it, please do. I'm sure Jerry can distribute the flyer. So thank you for letting me speak. All right, thank you.
Hey, Carlton, man, I tell you, I'm a stickler on words and 4 words, and I happen to note that you said that the guy, the policeman that shot Brother Jacob in the back all of those times is back patrolling. I just want to make a inference there that he's back to terrorizing.
Yeah,
He ain't patrolling. And another thing is, I caught a whiff this week that Biden is not well. Generally, we know that it's his policy and what he does that he wants to project to the country, but we know that they have people as well. So being that the whiff that I got that he's not well, when I watch Biden walk and move and talk, to me, I felt it for months that there was something going on, but I detect some an onset of Alzheimer's or something from what I'm hearing from my people now. Bill got sources now, but I'm telling y'all, man. So the fact that he has not spoken out on that situation and he's aware of it, I want to just drop that in our spirits that his people need to be more on top of it and getting on things like that.
Yeah, because I was reading today, since 2016, 5,000 civilians has been killed by police since September the 30th, 2016. 400 unarmed drivers had no prior had no record. They were unarmed, driving as passenger. They was either driving or as passenger who were not under pursuit of for violence or any crime, but only stopped for a tail light, or they couldn't see their license plates or something like that, and it escalated into the death of some people. So the police reform and has to be a part of the American agenda now, if we're going to do anything. One thing, I know you heard about what took place in Philadelphia. They are stopping police from giving tickets and stopping people for something as small as a tail light, or if you can't see the license plate, if they run a stop sign, now they got to mail the ticket to them rather than stopping them and escalating this violence that's taking place by law enforcement. Also, I was reading that in some places, I think it's 600 jurisdictions, 10% of their income is from their revenue come from tickets and all of that. And 200 jurisdiction, 284 jurisdiction, 20% of their income come from fines. And many small cities, they have areas collect more than $100 per person in their jurisdiction. So, and let you know how bad this thing really is and what's taking place as far as that is concerned. So it's necessary to make sure that there's police reform, and there's also local and state reform as far as fines and fees. They need to find another way to fund law enforcement rather than through just giving people tickets and making quotas and all that. And you may have not done anything at all. So you got to go to court or either just pay the fine. Most people just pay the fine because they don't want to go to court, lose a day on their job. And most of them can't afford it because most communities that that are getting a lot of these tickets are over police anyway, and they are underprivileged communities. So yeah, I'll be, y'all gonna be live streaming that? Carl?
Can you?
Yeah, I hear you. I think you froze. You're on mute. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, okay. I am not sure if it's going to be live streamed. I don't think so. I think it's meant to be an in-person event.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll find out. If it is, I will definitely let you know. I'll find out.
Okay. We're gonna move to what our topic was about today. Integration versus desegregation. I'm gonna start with you, Carlton. What do you think? How do you feel about? What do you think was the process, and what do you think happened during that period? Do you think that we it was a great decision, or do you think that we made 2 steps forwards and 5 steps backwards in the so-called integration?
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day that it was an inevitable decision, right? I mean, yeah, it probably would have turned out different if we kept things as they were before, separate but equal standard. But at the end of the day, looking at what's happened with globalization over the past, like 20 years or so now, with the 30 years, 30, 40 years, with the establishment of the internet, which has essentially connected us literally all over the world, no matter what hood or ghetto or mansion you live in. Everybody's connected by the internet. We see this with the video gaming. You have people that you could be playing with in Australia or India or in China, playing a video game like Halo at the same time. I mean, when I was a kid, you have the arcade games. You go to the arcade center and you play there. Then you had Nintendo and you invite your friends over. So I just believe that with the advancements in technology and the internet, I believe it's inevitable that we were going to have, we were going to evolve beyond separate but equal and have integration happen. Now, it didn't have to happen the way it did, right? But at the same time, even with it occurring, ever since the Supreme Court case decision, we have seen, I know that the time I was at Legal Defense Fund, and even to this day, there still are cases that Legal Defense Fund takes on where schools have not implemented integration according to the law. And this is especially down south. There are a number of schools that are still segregated. And so I do believe that at the end of the day, yes, it needed to happen. It was good that it happened when it did, because ultimately it was inevitable that we were going to have to integrate just with the advancements in technology, globalization as a result of that, which we're seeing with global climate change and so on and so forth. Even the protests last year on police accountability were not just national in scope, they were global in scope, because the internet connects everybody, in a way that we have not been ever, to be honest. And so this is a new thing, and I think it's kind of evolved us into a state of mind where we all have to now kind of see the commonality amongst each other that make us human, first confront all of these issues that prevent that, like racism and xenophobia and just all of these biases, sexism, transphobia, etc. I think that that's where we're at right now as a species, is that we're evolving and we're in that rough phase of the evolution, which is a lot of resistance for a change. But that's what I'm saying. So I know it may not have been a direct answer, but I just want to say that in my opinion, the internet has changed everything. And no matter if we want or not, if we're white supremacists like Trump and them, or if we are all like Obama, multicultural, type of perspective, it's inevitable. We were going to have to integrate regardless. And also global climate change is another reason why we would have to integrate. I mean, we're losing out on resources like land and even potable water. And so at the end of the day, either we continue to segregate which is only going to lead to our self-destruction, or we learn how to live together. I know some of these billionaires have chosen to spend money on going to another planet so that they could just like do the same thing there. We'll see what happens with that. But like I said, I do think it was inevitable just looking at it from a contemporary perspective.
Bill, what you think?
Well, I think it was inevitable as well. Integration. I mean, Harry Truman back in 1949 got the ball rolling, but in '54, Brown versus the Board of Education and separate but equal. A lot of people think that we were just clamoring to be amongst and to be a part of, but all we wanted was the best of the best as far as books and decent schooling and being. I mean, to be able to go to a restaurant and eat like any other dignified person and not have to go in the back door, and all of what this country had made us less than wasn't us trying to be like, or we just wanted, all we've ever wanted was to be treated equal and fairly and to live up to its constitution of all men are created with unalienable and all of that malarkey they put in the Constitution that they don't almost believe in and live up to. But that's all we want. We don't want more than. We just want to be able to live great and not continue to expect to get our pie in the sky. We want to be able to live royal and like the royal people that we are right here. So yeah, I think integration was inevitable. Now we were doing some great things on our own. Then again, we had to. We know that when forced, we are survivors and we are builders and thinkers. They didn't know how to build. We taught them all that good old stuff. We are the inventors. We are the original man, and I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Vern, what do you think? Do you think integration was segregation versus integration? Which you think integration was good for us, or do you think it's an illusion parading as integration?
Parading as integration, Jerry. That's my opinion. My opinion is that I think overall we probably were better off as a nation of people doing segregation than we were doing integration, because we gave up a lot of stuff. You know, even with the Plessy decision in 1896, when they declared separate but equal, on surface, that don't sound bad on the surface if it were true, if it was truly equal. But we all know it wasn't equal, okay? And that's what probably led up to the Brown case in '54 that really tipped it off on this thing. And then ultimately with the Civil Rights Act of '64, that kind of segregated, burnt everything together. And then in '70, when we had the mandatory integration of schools. But I just want folks to look back at, as a race of people, as a group of people, as an independent nation, if you will, if I'm allowed to use that word, if we were a nation of people. I think that back then, Jerry, you probably lived to see some of that before. I did before integration, for this so-called full integration. We owned a lot of things back then. We had doctors and lawyers and independent businesses, and we were separate. The Wall Street, the Wall Street, the Black Wall Street is an excellent illustration of the things that we've done in all the other cities around the country that showed our true Black independence. I believe when we went to this so-called integration, and I can't blame a lot on white folks, but they're gonna have to bear their share of it. Black folks also, I think, kind of abandoned their own legacies, if you will, for white legacy. They stopped using our businesses in hopes that they can go and use white businesses and think it's better. And That's what I have my issue with this integration versus segregation. I think as a group of people, we were forced to be self-reliant and independent, and we excelled at it. We excelled at it. The only thing we wanted to do, can you imagine what would have happened if we was truly treated equal even before these laws were passed? And that's the only thing we really, this is what Bill was alluding to just a minute ago. The only thing we ever really wanted to be given the same opportunity, given the same equal opportunity. But it was unequal. That would force integration because of the unequalness of it. I subscribe to the method of what I think Marcus Garvey and the Farrakhan
Yeah.
and those folks. I think that we should be self-reliant. We should. My philosophy in life is that don't ever be dependent on anybody. Everybody dependent on somebody at some point in time, but don't be totally 100% dependent on anybody else. Be independent. And I think as a race of people, we're so dependent now on white folks that we're not able to be totally independent anymore. So
excellent points, Vern. But on our Facebook stream, we got some great points as well. We got Young Bloxers, Young, that says, "Amen. Equal is all I ask for. I pray daily." But Sam Clark, Samuel X says, "I say what the great Night Talks show host Mr. Bob Law used to say: integration never happened. The segregation is what happened. If integration happened, we still would have the black high school, stores, banks, etc. What happened was desegregation. Ours shut down, and we had to shut down and use their miseducated schools, discriminated against in their stores. We wanted equality. They say separate but equal, but it was separate and unequal." Johnny Lowe says, "Judge Taney said a black man had no rights, which a white man was bound to respect."
You know, Brother X is absolute, as far as I'm concerned, is right. You know, and Vern, I agree with you. I've said forever that we under the illusion of inclusion in this country. But going back to that, separate and unequal, you know, as we were progressing all over this country, they saw that progress. Jealousy and envy and hatred
Inferiority.
arose in the country to burn down everything that we built. It burned down Tulsa, Oklahoma. It burned down places in Texas. They overthrew places in Wilma, I think where you going, Carlson. They destroyed and slaughtered people in the early 1900s, where we call the purge that took place in the 1900s. In Elaine, Arkansas, in Rosewood, Florida, here where we live, in Chicago, all over the country. They call it the Red Summer, where Black people businesses was burnt to the ground. But you know, they were the rioters, but the law enforcement came in and killed, along with those rioters, came in and killed Black people for trying to defend themselves. You know, so it was you know, the Klan and the White Citizen Council and all that, they were against us, and so were law enforcement. And like you said about Judge Tanner, you know, no respect of the Black man in the country. And I agree with you, Vern, about Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey put together one of the greatest agenda probably in the history of the country for Black people, which was called the Negro Improvement Association. And then came Elijah Muhammad after him. And there were many others who were saying the same thing, that we need to be independent, or we need to demand. Elijah Muhammad was the one said we need to demand that we, you know, if we can't get along, then we need to have some states of our own. And we must demand that from the government. So we knew that there was going to be a hard pill for them to swallow, because they didn't want us to have independence, because They use our resources. They extract our resources to build their communities all the time. That's what law enforcement is for, to extract the resources from the Black community and build their communities outside of our communities. So we are always at their mercy, especially when law enforcement is engaged with us.
Yes.
Awesome.
Amen. Samuel X says on a Facebook stream, yes, sir, because whenever they play fair, we Black people always win.
Yeah, and it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, you think about people that come up out of after being forced into slavery.
Yeah.
Not that we were slaves. We were forced into slavery.
Right.
We were the intelligent people that built America, and they took that intelligence away from us. You know, by taking away our resource, access to capital, access to education. You know, during the period of slavery, you could be killed for learning how to read. And sometime now, we won't read to save our lives.
Yes.
But back then we were gun ho about learning. But then we allow our children to, we allowed our schools to be closed, so that when they closed the schools, we had to go to their schools. And then that meant that your children now being taught by people who are in the Klan, people who are skinheads and Nazis. As somebody said, I was reading, said the Jews would have never allowed the Nazis to teach their children.
Right.
But we allow these people who have no interest in the Black community. And this is why they're going crazy over critical race theory. Carlton,
yes.
What say you?
I mean, what I think is that, at the end of the day, I think that we need to just make sure that we're focused on advancing the Black agenda. I think we need to stop waiting on other people to do it. And I know that there have been a number of people that have said this in different ways. Some ways have not been the most respectful, or at least the most well received. Like I know Dave Chappelle tried to say this with his skit that he got in trouble for, The Closer.
Mm-hmm.
He also said some other things that I think were very offensive to different groups of people, especially transsexuals. But I think that ultimately the point he was trying to make is that if you're not advancing the Black agenda, then you're not helping Black people.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you try to lump Black people into the LGBTQ community, or if you try to lump them into the feminist movement, or you try to lump them into like the progressive movement or the liberal movement, whatever. Even if you lump us in there, we have our own specific history, as you just laid out, the over 400 years slavery and all the such, Jim Crow and everything that's directly connected to this country. It's not connected to other countries, directly connected to this one that we live on. And if we're going to be doing, anybody's going to be doing any kind of advocacy work with us to bring about change, it doesn't matter if you're a woman, LGBTQ, you're still Black, all right? At the end of the day, no matter what you are, the first thing people see is your race and your gender, right? You're a Black man or you're a Black woman. And that's how they treat you. Even if you're trans, let's say that you're a trans woman or a trans man, you're still a Black trans man and a Black trans woman. And they still gonna treat you like a Black person in America. It doesn't matter if you're trans or LGBTQ or whatever. The first thing people see is your race and your gender, and that is how they're going to treat you. And so at the end of the day, if you're not advancing, making changes that are gonna positively impact Black people, then you cannot say that you are doing things that are advancing the Black agenda. And that's what's going on right now, is that there's just a lot of, you know how they have the term greenwashing? Anytime companies try to make it seem like they're actually doing things environmentally friendly and they're really not, they're just making it look or sound that way. They're still polluting, the world and making global climate change worse. I feel like something like that also happens, with Black people, where, organizations, businesses, like we saw after last year's protest from Black Lives Matter, calling for police accountability and defund. All these businesses, like corporations, jumped on the bandwagon, right? Oh yeah, we support Black Lives Matter. Defund the police. They were throwing all this money toward it, right? Where are they now? Where were they when the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act needed to get over that hump, to get beyond the finish line? Where were they? The only company I know that was really putting in any investment into defund and all of that was Ben & Jerry's, which they're still doing, And but I'm just saying, beyond that, the rest of them, that like AT&T and all of them that threw in initially, oh yeah, we support, they quickly backed out of it once, people were not in the streets clamoring for Black Lives Matter anymore, which means to me, you were never really supportive of advancing the Black agenda. You were just supportive of whatever made you look good in the moment, right? And that's what's happening a lot. And that's what I think Dave Chappelle was really trying to get on about, like, I think he made a statement about how the LGBTQ people are a minority until they need to be white, and so it was just, that was a very powerful statement that he made, right? And so I just feel like that's a luxury, that if you're a Black LGBTQIA person, trans, etc., that does not apply to you.
Right.
You can't just like say, oh, well, I'm white now, right? Like I get all the privileges and protections that come with that in America, right? No, you can't. You don't have that luxury. And you're still LGBTQ, you're still trans. So you're dealing with it, you're still a woman. You're dealing with it even worse. You're still a Black man. You're dealing with it worse at the end of the day. So, I mean, to me, if you're not really advancing the Black agenda, then you're not really doing anything. And that's why you've heard me come on this show week after week talking about Biden. President Biden is not supportive of advancing the Black agenda. And I still believe that. I believe everything he said in his inaugural speech, everything he said during his campaign run was just to get the Black vote so he could get elected. Once he got that, now he's in office. What is he doing? I mean, they just got the infrastructure bill passed. Why? If you ask anybody, they'll tell you Biden put his foot in it, right? He didn't just let Congress on their own negotiate and figure it out like he did with the voting rights legislation, like he did with the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, right? No, he didn't do that. He made phone calls. He lobbied Jayapal in the Progressive Caucus, and he was in touch with Clyburn, the whip. He was in touch with Hoyer. He was in touch with Pelosi, and he was moving things along to make sure to get that win. The only thing that Black people are wondering, all right, and this is why I saw in the news today, he has lost at least 20% of the Black vote. That is a fact. Al Sharpton was talking about it today on MSNBC. Okay, so, and that's just what we know he lost. What we don't know, right? The people that didn't participate in whatever polling they did is probably more than 20%, right, of the Black vote that he's lost at this point. Why is that? Why do you think? I'll tell you why. Because he has not shown us that he's doing anything to advance the Black agenda. Like I said, it's just blackwashing, essentially. Just saying things so that he can make it seem like he's doing it, but the reality is that he's not. So that's my opinion. That's my opinion. I want to stress that.
Well,
yeah,
I first want to start out by saying I'm pro Joe, but secondly, I want to add that I am agreeing with Carlton every step of the way on this. I mean, I just do not see it. That lift every voice that he ran and campaigned on, I'm not seeing it. So I mean, Brother Vern, I know you and your ride or die, Dr. Williams, y'all high on him, and I want to be high on him, but y'all, I'm just not seeing it. I'm sorry, I'm just not seeing it either.
But yeah, one of the things that I voted for Joe Biden, I campaigned for Joe Biden, but I was totally disappointed with him not being a force in reconciling with the Voting Rights Act. Because if you can get the Voting Rights Act, everything else can come after that. Everything can, because you got power now to make sure that you stay in power. And the people that write the legislation that stay in power, which is the congressional people and senators. And we had the opportunity to get even more senators because so many of them are retired. But the thing about it, if we don't get this Voting Rights Act through, if we're not the supporters of voting in the country, we can't get anything done in the future because these people intend to make this so that you will never be able to vote again into, for another generation. Already, when we look at people who have served their time and all of that, they cannot vote. Still, they are still under a repressive regime of states now because they can't vote in the country, and they are doing it to us who have never had even as much as a ticket. Now, many Black people in the country can't vote, and if they are elderly without a birth certificate now they're in trouble, and if you haven't voted, if you haven't re-registered, like here in the state of Florida, those of us who want to vote by mail got to go re-register. Mm-hmm. So they're making it more and more difficult for us to vote in the country. And it's not just us, it's white people too who are going to be suffering the consequences. They just don't know it yet. So, because we are headed toward an autocratic form of government and a dictatorship.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, I still don't understand why they're laying everything at the foot of Joe Biden. Okay, Joe Biden, he can't make law. He can only sign it into law. Okay.
Right.
Why aren't they attacking these congressmen and these senators who has the power to make law and to change things? Biden can only do what the legislation allow him to do. Okay. And I know he put pressure on folks and so much as he did so far. But again, I stand by what I believe. I believe that Biden will come through. He might be like Jesus, might not come when you want to, but I think he's gonna come through before his term is up. And like I said, and Biden is typical white man. Okay, his agenda, our agenda, is not going to be the forefront of his administration. Okay, he's gonna get the generalized. They look at stuff generally throughout the country. Okay, and there's more folks out there than Black folks, and nothing ever happened good if you're gonna push the Black agenda, in particular, push it ahead of everything else. Okay, and so I believe that once he gets his mainstream stuff done, I think that he's going to focus a little more specifically that we're going to help the Black agenda. I do believe that. So
Vern,
I don't know. I don't know. But I don't think you blame it all on Biden.
Well, what I think you're failing to realize, Vern, is that first of all, you need to go back and read Lift Every Voice that he campaigned on. Secondly, we're November 7th today. The 3 days ago, we celebrated 1 year. I mean, you got 3 years left with a year from the midterms. 1 year from the midterms. Now, we're losing governorship in Virginia. Time is, we don't have the luxury of time, Brother Vernon. And you keep saying, wait. But if you read the Lift Every Voice that he campaigned on and go back and look at what he's actually doing and saying, it's like he's quieter than a church mouse on the issues that he ran on that are important to the Black community. And I know that he can't come out. First of all, Barack couldn't come out pushing the Black agenda.
Right.
This fella in the office can. He can come out and the Black agenda is what has him in the seat he's in. Why does we have to be placated on and stroked and everything and always got to come last? It needs to be at some point.
Well, Brother Bill, why didn't y'all put that same pressure on Barack? Barack had 8 years in it. He didn't suffer.
But Barack didn't run on. Barack didn't have lift every voice. You need to read lift every voice and then
Biden didn't run on lift every voice. Biden didn't run on lift every voice. Biden had lift every voice. It was on the internet. And you remember on the shows we were asking why he wasn't really enforcing or talking about lift every voice. But it was a great program, but he never talked about lift every voice.
Well, it was what he campaigned on.
No, he did not campaign on lift every voice.
Okay, all right.
He didn't campaign. I wish he would have, because the Lift Every Voice was a wonderful program. It was but he didn't really campaign on Lift Every Voice.
Well, did he say he would have our back?
Yeah, but that's not
No, that
campaigning
ain't
on
lift every voice.
Right. And then if you're hollering about Biden, then let's have the same anger for Manchin. Let's have the same anger for the Republican Party, because they're the one holding everything up. And I totally agree that you know I'm not for or against, but I'm just saying it's not just one person.
Yeah,
No,
but
I'm for Biden.
Joe Biden put a lot of capital behind this bill that he just got through. He didn't put no capital behind the voting rights bill.
I agree.
You know, he didn't put no capital behind the George Floyd Police and Protection Act, Justice Act. You know, I'm saying the same thing that he put behind, the same energy that he put behind this so-called bipartisan bill, which gonna, you know, go 90% to white people. He didn't put 10% of that energy to make sure that we got a voting rights bill, which if we don't get that voting rights bill, it's, you know, whether it's Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, or whoever it is, we still have to fight. We still have to let Joe Biden know, as the president, we elected you to go there to help push these things across across the river, if you would. The thing about it, they were not the same energy. The energy has to come from both him and the House and the senators, the Democrat senators. Now he may have something that's up his sleeve sometime in the future, but right now we're looking at a year down the road when the election is coming up. Meaning that if we don't have a voting rights bill, many people in this country, especially us, will not be able to vote. Not only us, but white, Hispanics, and all of that. Many people won't be able to vote in the country because of the laws, these draconian laws that they are putting in place in every state that's going to affect how we get out and vote, or whether we turn out, or even whether it is certified or not.
So if we don't support Biden, and we're saying Biden is this and Biden is that, and we make people start turning away from Biden, what's our alternative? What's our alternative?
Well, we're not saying to turn away from Biden. We're saying
when people hear you complaining about, you know, I can see their comments. When people see you and hear you complain and Biden didn't do this and Biden didn't do that, the first thing people are going to do is start turning away. Oh, Biden. What is the alternative?
For him to do something, and the Congress and the Senate to do something. We voted for them. You know, they want to have to do the legislation.
What is it that you all want Biden to do? Just tell me exactly what is it y'all need him to do?
Get the voting rights bill passed.
One of the things.
Anything.
What?
At this point, anything.
Give me an example. Give me an example what he should do. Give me some.
The same pressure. Spend the same amount of time on voting rights as he did trying to get this so-called bipartisan bill passed. He didn't say a word on voting rights. And that bothered me, you know, because then now you're saying, you know, after we have spent all this time getting you elected, you know, fall back again. You know, it happened under President Obama too.
Jerry, had the fat lady sang yet on the voting right bill? Had the fat lady sang on that?
No.
The bill failed. The bill failed. Now they can bring it back up, but when they bring it back up, will it be too late for it to be implemented? That's what we're saying. You only have a year. most of the time, after in January, half of these people not going to even be coming back into the Senate or the Congress because they're going to be out campaigning.
Well, Samuel X. Clark said, and I want to listen to this. He said, with Trump, we woke up, and with Biden, we went back to sleep. How did we wake up with Trump? And
Because we was out protesting and all that.
That's something, that's a statement really that we need to really talk about.
That's a great point, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to wake people up, because we are lulled, I think, now that we done got this maniac out, and now that we think that we can rest on our laurels. But right now we cannot be quiet and give Joe a free ride just because he's there. We got to let our viewers know on Let's Talk and our voices that we're tired of going out here standing on the street corners waving and signing and getting them in because of what they said. And then just like every other politician, president that campaigns and sit in our pulpits on Sundays every 4 years, and once they get the prize, then we're on the back burner until they need us again in 4 years. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, then we're not saying that people shouldn't be with Joe Biden. I'm with Joe Biden.
I'm pro Joe.
I'm pro Joe. But by the same token, I'm pro voting rights as well. I'm pro, the George Floyd Justice Act, because these things affect all of us who are Black, especially the Black community. Not saying that we don't want Joe Biden as president, because we damn sure don't want what we have in the past, that pretend president.
Or what about DeSantis as president?
We don't want that clown either. That's a clown. I mean, a fool. That's
I agree with Carol. This Biden bashing is not good, because people like sheep. You know how we led, and to me, and I was talking yesterday, just two prominent people in Pensacola just yesterday, right? And to learn that these folks that can vote didn't vote, because what I'm voting for. I mean, two prominent people that didn't even vote in the national election. Well, he said, I don't want to vote in that because it's not doing me any good. I can't understand that mentality, because we can't live that. We can't sustain that. And then Biden bashing is definitely not going to help Black folks, because we already disenfranchised, and they thinking that all I'm standing by is get the old boy a chance. Okay, I think he's gonna pull through, and we'll see what can happen if it don't. He hadn't done any worse than any damn body else before him.
It's a play on words, Brother Vern, because I promise you, my attempt here is not to bash Joe Biden. I am pro Joe. I'm just sick and tired of them courting me on election season, and then we keep on year after year, decade after decade, century, well, not century after century, but decade after decade, getting these campaign promises. And then we go to sleep and not hold them their feet to the fire.
That's Democratic Party. Then was the time. Democratic Party, not just Joe Biden. I understand that, but we've got to. You can say what you all are saying, which I totally agree with. But then we have to say, but what is our alternative? How can we find a solution to this problem? Vernon asks us, well, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want to see, so that we can say, this is what we want to see. We don't want the other party, but we want to see that. But we need to make it clear to the people that there's no alternative. Don't stay home, because with our people, what they'll do is they'll end up staying home. They won't vote at all. And then where will we be?
Yeah,
So,
but you still don't mean that you're not wanting people to vote. I mean that you want to hold people that you vote for
accountable.
Promised us.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that.
Hold them accountable. You got to do that. I just want to say that, the power of the vote that our ancestors fought and died for was not only about having the ability to go out and vote for people that you believe, are going to represent your best interests, but it's also about having the ability to hold them accountable when they don't stand by what they promise. And I think that, in my opinion, I don't see this as Biden bashing. I see it as holding our elected officials accountable for what they said they were going to do when they campaigned hard to get our vote. And I think the same thing runs true even for Trump people. When people are quote unquote bashing Trump, I'm all about it, because you want to know something? If you voted for him, you have every right to hold him accountable if he did not come through on what you thought he was going to do and what he said he was going to do when you voted for him. And I think the same thing should be true for Biden. I don't think Trump should be the only person that we look at holding accountable, and like Biden for some reason should have the shield on him and we don't say anything bad about him. No, Biden is messing up, all right? He has lost at least 20% of the Black vote. That is substantial. And we should all be talking about that, because that is not about any Biden bashing. That's about Biden's actions and inactions as the president of the most powerful country in the world. And at the end of the day, he is the one who's accountable for that, not the Democrats. It is Biden. At the end of the day, he does not have to comply with the DNC. He can do whatever he wants to do. Look at Obama. Obama did a lot of things that Democrats were not in support of when he was president through his executive powers. Biden can do the same thing. I'm just saying he is accountable.
He has no control of, as far as he can go out there and push it more, but that goes to Congress. Is that correct? Is that the responsibility of Congress?
But he can campaign on that. He can whenever he's out, he can talk about the Voting Rights Act. To get, if you want to get that 20-some% and maybe more back in your corner, you're gonna have to show that you're interested in what they're concerned about. You can't sit back and say, "Oh, well, I got to vote this bill through, and everybody ought to be satisfied." No, we're not satisfied, and we can't vote in the future. Let
me address Carlton. The difference between the Biden supporters and the Trump supporters is loyalty to their man. Okay, Trump hadn't if they were to held him accountable for all the shit that he promised that he never delivered, then he would have been out there. But I don't care what he does, right, wrong, or indifferent, they'll support him.
That's true.
The nth degree. That's the difference between these so-called Democrats. We every mistake that we make, then we want to hold them accountable. We want to make them the example. Why don't we be loyal to Biden as they are loyal to Trump? Okay.
Why can't Biden be loyal to us? Why is it always gotta be us?
Right.
When are we ever gonna get anything, man? It ain't, man.
What is it that you want?
George Floyd just released the act to end voter rights
to the Black community. What has he done bad?
What is he?
More about what he has not done.
Has not.
What has he not done? You had the child tax credit. You had the $1,400 additional extra money. You've got the infrastructure plan. What did you get on the Trump?
All of those initiatives predominantly benefit white people, poor white people in America, which are blue collar people that Biden supports. When we're talking about, even today, Al Sharpton talked about how the infrastructure bill, it has minimal impact on the Black community, right? It's really going to be the Build Back Better plan that would have more of an impact on Black people. That's not going to pass. We already know that. Manchin already said he's not going to support it. So at the end of the day, the infrastructure is not really what supports us. What does support us is what Jerry has been saying. That voting rights law, which Al Sharpton, all these Black leaders have gone out in the streets for weeks upon weeks. What was it? The Reverend out of North Carolina,
Dr. Barber.
Reverend Barber. He did all of those marches over weeks, all of it in support of the voting rights law. And I mean, what did Biden even respond to those marches? Did he even come out with a speech saying, "I hear you, we're working on it, trust me, we're going to get there"? Nothing, literally. dead silent, And so to me, that's what we're talking about, the inaction, the lack of action, the lack of voice on issues that directly impact Black people in a big way. He's not done anything on that. He just hasn't.
Johnny Lowe on our Facebook stream says Blacks have been voting Democrats since the 60s. What is that guiding us?
Well, let me say this. I agree with what Carlton was saying. The thing about it, Biden don't have to always be out there. They got surrogates that can go out when there's marches taking place on voting rights. You got Congress people that need to be out there talking, especially from the Black caucus. Those people they've been inactive as well. I know a lot of them have gotten arrested in Washington, D.C., but I'm talking about around the country where there's a plethora of Black people, that in locked in areas where they need to be registered to vote or need to be hearing from those individuals. I know the virus had kept a lot of people in-house over the last year and a half or so. But the thing about it now, if you're going to be out there with other people, then you need to be out there with us as well, making sure that the people hear what you're trying to do. It was just like the rollout with the Build Back Better plan. That plan could have passed, but the thing about it, the people don't know what's in it, how it's going to benefit me. So if it's not there benefiting them and benefiting us, then what good is it if you don't know what the deal is in the first place? And that's why I say, you got surrogates. Use those surrogates. Trump used them every day, and he ain't even president no more. This clown out there with, still got people out there like the one that won in Virginia. Same mentality, same concept. Just didn't have Trump there with him, but it's the same Trumpian old guard mentality that's there. And I'm saying that the Democrats have to do a better job of keeping people informed on what's going on.
Of messaging. Back to I'm going to go to integration because I want to ask, and I know y'all can flip back, but did y'all talk about Martin Luther King's statement? I saw a statement.
No, we didn't. Yeah.
I'm going to read this in regards to what Martin Luther King talked about integration, and it kind of connects here. But he says, "I fear I may have integrated my people into a burning house." Isn't that deep? That's deep. And he said, integration certainly did not serve us well. In our haste to be separate, we overlooked the value of equality, even if separated. What do y'all think about Martin Luther King? I just want to ask that question, saying he fears that integration had turned his people into a burning house. That was his analogy.
I agree with that, Carol. I agree with his analogy of that about this burning house. And then again, we talked about, he absolutely right. We in the quest of trying to be equal, I think we forgot that we forgot our own heritage, our own history, if you will. In that is that carrot that they stick out in front of you, and you're gonna leave our system to integrate into their system. It ain't integrate. It's more like assimilate into their system.
You hit on the head, Vernon.
Right. So we lost a lot. We lost a lot with that illusion of integration, and it would be fine if it was true. If we could integrate, and we integrated. The purpose of us integrating, y'all, was for equal opportunity, right? That was the goal, is to be equul, and that was the reason we wanted to get away from segregation, because of the unequal part of it. But when we integrated, we still didn't get that equality part. Okay.
That's it. That's what he's saying. The equality part wasn't there, and you hit on the head when you said that the integration was a form of us trying to assimilate or make ourselves like them. Integration is when two people come together and they intertwine and integrate. We had to come and try to be them.
Right, assimilate. You're right.
So that was not integration.
We had to become seconds. We was already considered by them, considered second-class citizens. Once you talked about integration, now when you go over there, now you are really a second-class citizen because they called you a minority, you know, and that minority has a double negative to it. And so, when you talk about minority, you less than, not only in numbers, but in your physical and mental being, and that you are less than. And so when we gave up our historic districts where we had businesses, stores, and where we could go and have some peace while we were there to, you didn't have to go in there and be discriminated against all the time. We fought to get over there to their clothing stores, to their furniture stores, and all of that, to their malls, and forgot about continue to building on and passing on to our children, or the children that was the parents that was before us, forgot to pass down to us. And many times we were so enamored about getting away that we forgot. And we still that way.
Right. So what did the whites, and when you say integration, what did they should have learned something from the blacks for integration. What did they have to do? Nothing?
Nothing.
We did everything.
Martin Luther King said it didn't cost them nothing to integrate Lunch County. And as a matter of fact, they won. They benefited hugely. It made the South into a mega for them. We still was at the mercy of begging them for a job even after that. Except when we had people like Maynard Jackson who understood businesses as well as politics. Maynard Jackson in Atlanta, if we'd have had a lot of Maynard Jackson, we would have still been better off in the process, even though integration was like an illusion of inclusion.
Young Blocks is young on our Facebook thing says, why were non-citizens compensated? Where is my reparations? Charity begins at home, then spreads abroad. But Johnny Lowe agrees with Jerry. Yes, Jerry, he says, Triple L says, we sold it instead of passing it on. And Sister Shirley Baker, North Carolina says, exactly, Jerry.
Well, you can see that from DeVillers down here in Pensacola. That was a black district.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't even know if we own anything on DeVillers anymore.
Yeah, we don't.
It was the same thing like we're in the hometown where I grew up in Helena. It was a business district there, a black business district. It's not there anymore. It left with us.
Well, Jerry. One thing about this is my prediction of Belmont Develop. Okay, it was when I came here in the early 70s. It was a thriving, almost an all-black business, and everybody was self-reliant. You even had doctor's offices down there, had a radio station down there. You had fun businesses down there, had clubs down there, everything. But look at it today. Now, it's coming back, but it's not coming back black.
Right.
That's right.
I want y'all to remember. I want you to start remembering. Remember when this big controversy about when they was running those power lines down through the black community, and they stopped short right there in front of. They stopped short right there in front of Joe Morris Funeral Home, right? Then they start putting in underground utilities. Folks thought that was great for the community, but they didn't know what the grand plan were. Okay, and it is I predict if you look at where Belmont and Davila is right now, if you could see with your eyes and look down straight down in there to the water, where would you land up? You're gonna land up into that ball field down there, okay?
Right.
And so they created a blues historical trail down there. This is really not traditional, a blues historical trail, but they create an illusion of it and making it there so that they laying the ground. This is my opinion. They're laying the groundwork, okay, to have Belmont de Villa, the next Seville quarters, but based on Black heritage, okay? We're
Right.
not going to benefit from it. They are
Right.
white folk. They want white people to come in. You see all these little houses they building down there for $400,000 and $500,000. Now these shotgun houses down there, they building for $400,000 and $500,000, right? Down
Right.
in that area. They ain't for us. They ain't for us. Okay.
Mhm.
So you can see where we lost everything. I don't know where you know when Reverend Powell closed his eyes, they're gonna take that building and demolish it. And Mike sold some of it already, but and I think Mike is the only one on hold out with the Bunny Club and stuff. But once they get a hold of that, it's all going to be completely white owned, white controlled, but they're gonna make money based on us. They're gonna call it the historical Black district, but they're gonna make money, and we're not based on our. That's just my philosophy. In 10 years from now, you're not gonna know it. Okay,
Right.
it'll be a whole different.
Well, just like Beale Street in Memphis. We used to go there when there was nothing but, when we was in school, we would go over there on weekend and go to Beale Street in Memphis. It was so nice. It was blacks, it shut down for a long time. Barely you could go to anything over there. Now, Beale Street is majority white. It might be one or two Black businesses in there. Same thing with Cherry Street in Helena. And it was a black thriving metropolis, as I would call it. Because you could go there, you go from hamburger joints to clubs, everything. Yeah. And now nothing.
Yeah, can't find any.
That goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Is that's what integration got us.
Right. Yeah. Right. What changes happen in Chicago? I know if it's happening here in Little Pensacola in Chicago, what changes? What Black areas like 35th Street and the South Side, South Side Chicago? Yep. What changes are happening?
They building it.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of gentrification. That they knocked down. Was it the Cabrini Green? Housing property a while ago.
State Street
displacement. Yes, State Street. Yeah, the displacement of a lot of Black people who lived in that public housing. And then also, recently President Obama just broke ground on the Obama Library, which is actually located right at right by the South Side, or in the South Side Chicago community, which the last time I saw it, which was some years ago, when they were still building well, they still are, but it was like the beginning phase of when they were going to build a library. It was next to a Black community where there was a lot of abandoned, dilapidated properties right next to like residents, like where people actually lived. Like the only time I've seen that was really Philadelphia and Baltimore, Maryland, where I've seen it that bad. And so to me, it's evident that the Obama Library, everything else they're building in Chicago, is this gentrification, but that's happening everywhere. Small cities, big cities, medium-sized cities. It's happening all around the country. And this infrastructure bill actually that passed, one reason why it passed is because there's a lot of investment, a lot of private investment focused on the high-speed rail and also on some of the other provisions within the infrastructure bill. For instance, speaking of Chicago, there is currently the construction of a high-speed rail from Chicago to Detroit. Last I heard, about 2/3 of the rail has already been laid down, but they didn't have enough money through the federal government to finish laying down the rail for this high-speed rail for Detroit to Chicago, which is going to completely change the map in the Midwest when it comes to traveling. Two big cities, right? Both of them connected by this high-speed rail and going in between Indiana. So you have three major Midwestern states that are going to be impacted in a big way by this high-speed rail. Guess what? The infrastructure bill passed. Now that last piece of the rail is going to be completed. Why? Because now the federal money is there to pay for it, to subsidize it. So I'm just saying, what I've noticed from the work I've done in the Midwest is that the areas that in the cities like Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, Gary, Indiana, even Rockford, Illinois, Chicago, Detroit, Michigan, all of these cities are currently undergoing a lot of gentrification. right? And as a result of that, like we saw in New York City, where I'm from, when the gentrification occurred there, what else did we see that was a part of the gentrification? An increase in discriminatory policing tactics toward
Mhm.
Black and brown community members, like stop and frisk. That was the big one in New York that was going on when Giuliani and Bloomberg were mayor, which is also the same time that New York was at its height of gentrification, was during their mayoral runs as mayors. And so I'm seeing the same thing happening in Muskegon, like West Michigan, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, which, Kalamazoo is equidistant, right in between Detroit, Michigan, and Chicago, Illinois. So they're going to put a stop there, a train stop on the high-speed rail in Kalamazoo. This small city that really nobody knows much of is gentrifying at a very fast rate. Why? I was wondering why. I think now we know. And this is why Biden, once again, when we talk about what is his interest, business interests and poor white people, like middle class and poor white, that is his number one priority. That's always been his priority. I'm just saying, like, he's
But
consistent.
don't you think that the Blacks are going to get jobs just as well as others? Don't you think it would benefit the Black community as well with jobs and
I mean,
contracts?
I agree that it should, but come on now. We already know the way that Black people are currently treated, when it comes to the procurement process and when it comes to contracts. We are always put at the bottom of the list. And even if they do consider us, they're never going to pay us the same rate or give us as good of a contract as they would our white counterparts. I mean, this is an ongoing issue that's been going on for centuries with Black people and being entrepreneurs in America. But I just want to say one last thing I do want to say about this is just that I think what we're talking about integration is very interesting, considering the recent census data, right, that came out about how the white population is declining and the Latino and the Asian AAPI population is actually growing substantially. And within the next, less than 10 years, they are going to be the majority in the country. Black people we're like staying steady. So that means that we're going to have a majority country by like 2030, like 10 years from now, essentially. And so I just think it's interesting talking about integration because, like I said earlier, it's inevitable, right? Like, no matter what was going to happen, it was going to happen. Now, think about it like this, though. Let's say we did not integrate, right? Let's say we maintained our separation. How would that have impacted interracial couplings? How would that have impacted interracial marriages, right? Like there was the Love case, the Supreme Court case about the Black woman, the white man that got married, like things like that. If we would have stayed segregated, how would that have impacted? Because think about it like this, you would never have had an Obama, right? You would not have. His parents would not have been legally able to even engage with each other like that to produce a President Obama. So there's two sides to every coin. That's the only thing. I just want to throw that in the mix.
But Carlton, from since slavery, white folks and Black folks have gotten together. That was never the deal breaker as far as I'm concerned. The deal breaker, what you talked about with procurements, contracts, compliance, and all of that. Contracts are the thing that make people rich in the country. If you can get those contracts, because now you can hire your people. You can hire for every contract you get if it's a good contract, and then you can hire 10 or 15 people more than what other people would hire. So the thing about it, we're always, like you say, at the bottom of the well. We're the face at the bottom of the well looking up while other people are advancing, even like you're saying about the Hispanic, the Asian, and all of them. They are advancing in contracts and procurements and all of that while we are still trying because, the thing, because we have to, because if most of the time the average person just can't afford the bond money that it would cost to procure a contract or to get a contract. But the thing about it, we got to learn how to put resources together so that we can do that and get a contractor that even if we are not, so we may have to sub under that contractor, Black contractor, or send some contractors to school. We may have to pay to do that. because that's the only way you're gonna be able to really say, okay, well, I want this contract without have to be a subcontract with some contractor, which may not get you nothing but, you know, pennies on the dollar, when you could get $1 million, 10 million, $100 million contract. Now you're getting maybe $100,000, $200,000.
But I thought for sure. Go ahead, Snow.
Yeah, Shirley Baker on Sacred Springs says cultural appropriation. Then Johnny Lowe says, what's the plan? We see it. What are we doing about it? Can we discuss a plan of preservation? But Samuel X. Clark has a really, really good point here. Point number 9 of what the Muslim belief says. We believe that the offer of integration is hypocritical and is made by those who are trying to deceive the Black people into believing that the 400-year-old open enemies of freedom, justice, and equality are all of the sudden their friends. Furthermore, we believe that such deception is intended to prevent Black people from realizing that the time in history has arrived for the separation from the whites of this nation. And then I want to just simply add that for everybody that's watching and streaming, there are 3 major Black banks in these United States of America, maybe 4. I might be off on that one, but One United is out of Miami, Florida. And get your Black card, people, please. We got to put our money and funds into banks that are going to loan to us and do all the things that we need done. And we need to support this. OneUnited.com. You can open an account with as little as $25. And all you got to do is put $1 a month to maintain it. But we have to start somewhere.
No.
I think it's 30 of them, Bill. I think it's 30 Black banks in the United States. It might be just 3 here in the state of Florida.
Major
bank.
national. Right. I think it's 3 or 4 national, but yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So overall, do you think it was worth us to integrate? I mean, that integrate means, you know, really going into the white person's kind of way of life. Do you think it was worth it to overall, looking at the big picture, looking from slavery, from segregation to integration to now? Is it worth it, or should we go back? You know, there's some groups saying separate again. What do you think? What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know. You know, I guess that's you gotta. What if we got to go back, because what if they have given us the same equal opportunities and without having to really fully give us the option to whether or not to integrate or not to integrate? We didn't necessarily want to integrate. What we wanted was fair opportunities. We want full opportunity that white people was getting. We want the same thing they was getting, okay? In their eyes, they feel like, well, you got to do what we do in order to get what we have, okay? I don't necessarily, I didn't want to go to a white school, okay? As long as they gave that Black school the same books and the same level of education they gave the white school, then we would fare on home. But that never happened, okay? So I think if we was given the same resources and the same opportunities as the whites were, I feel like integration wasn't necessary. I think we would have fared better off in our own right, in our own companies. And then we can also, because there was no limit on it, well, even if there were a limit on it, you couldn't cross over. But who cares as long as you get the same opportunity and the same resources.
You know, and the thing about it, what one of the things that was being fought for is to be able to travel across the country, to stay in a hotel if it was there. And the thing about it, it was quite a few Black hotels, but they was not the Ritz-Carlton and all of that, but they were hotels that were Black. If we'd have stayed there, we could have helped develop those places where people could go and have resorts that we could go to as well. But we stopped going even to those that where at one time we were not able to go and were not allowed to go. And you couldn't even swim in a pool. Even to this day, there are places where they are locking people up for going to a pool, or harassing them for going to a pool. And I'm saying we we've committed the biggest boycott in the history of a people against ourselves. And I'm not saying that integration, this so-called quote illusion of integration, didn't have some benefit. It had some benefits, but it has it's been more of a burden bearer to us, because now we don't fight for the things that, because we are so wrapped up in their jobs, making money for them, and thinking that we got a good job, that we won't even fight for what is rightfully ours in the first place.
Yeah.
We are not out there fighting for reparation.
How much you think that is of as much as our fault is there? Maybe that was that Willie Lynch syndrome, that mentality, because we won't support one another. What's right is right in the Black person's mind. Most Black people think a white business is better than a Black business, okay? And so we're running up against that kind of thing. You tell somebody asked me about a lawyer. If I recommend a Black lawyer, they turn their heads and they turn their nose up against a lawyer. If I recommend, I can even vouch for our own station, our radio station and TV station, okay? We never as good as a white station. The Black formatted station that is white owned is far better off in the minds of the folks. They would rather use those than to use Black owned, and oftentimes you get a better deal with us. But they don't do that. It's a mentality that Black folks has regarding our businesses. Most Black folks don't believe in supporting Black businesses, and there's another mentality about that is that Black people. I hate to say this, but I found this to be true in my experience. They don't want any part of making you thinking they're gonna make you rich. They don't mind making white people rich, but they think that anything that they're gonna do for you that's gonna upgrade your status in life, they don't have a part of it. But they don't have any problem with doing it with white people. I just don't
hate to say it,
it's a mentality situation.
Yeah.
And you're right, Bert, in a lot of instances, because I've heard people come out of Black business, oh, that person did such and such, and never go back. But we'll go back where people discriminate against you. Go back there and eat and everything else, These people, and you're talking about people that could be dangerous to your health.
Yeah.
But you won't even go back and talk to let that person know why you're angry at them. And so, that's sometimes the psychosis of where we at. And and that's ingrained in our DNA now from slavery to this point. And we have to with some kind of way, we're gonna have to get over that.
That's
we
right.
got to,
I saw
we're
one
gonna
time.
die.
This is true. I saw one time at the flea market. It hurt my heart so bad. A cracker had a stand, and I'm saying it. I said it, okay, and I stand by what I say. But it had a rebel flag in the background, and selling his goods. And a brother, somebody had the sign, and Black folks standing in line to get to that. I just didn't understand that.
And so, I think we going back and saying integration, but all of this is still happening now. It's still happening now. We still have separate schools. You might be integrated. You might go to a store where Blacks are treated differently than whites. All this is going on right now. So I don't think anything has really, really changed. I don't think integration per se still now is not real integration.
No, we're not integrated. Like you say, the majority of the Black schools in the Black community has been shut down because the people that came out of the Black school was the Louis Farrakhan, Martin Luther King, Toure. You had all the Black Panthers, all these brothers and sisters that came out during that period. They came out of Black school where they were organizing in schools, in Black schools, where they began to learn about their history and who they were. And now, you got some clowns running around talking about critical race theory. Then you have people like Condoleezza Rice talking about we shouldn't even talk about it. You know, I'm like, you know, it's the
Well, is that why they're not supporting the HBCUs? But, you know, pushing the, you know, when the young people want to go into the Black colleges and want to have that Black experience? Is that why there's no money going toward the HBCUs?
well, you know, they put a little money, just enough for them to stay alive, but not to really flourish the way they should. And then you have all your top athletes in the country run into places where they can be discriminated and being, you know, really tortured. Some of them in certain places couldn't even eat. You know, they laying on floors and stuff to play for somebody that didn't care nothing about them. And if they got hurt, they was out, their scholarship was gone. So, you know, they don't even think about going to the Morehouses, the Howards, and all of these other Black college FAMs and all of that. There's a lot of Black people there. And then the Black colleges got to do a better job at recruiting around the country as well.
But there, the industry, I guess businesses in those industries have to do a better job. I can remember back in the day, I used to be the minority business coordinator for a governmental agency, right? And we lack Black engineers, we lack Black lawyers, we lack a lot of Black talent. But the recruiters that they sent out from HR would not go to an HBCU school to recruit those that talent. They would rather go to another school and get that source Black from that school. And in fact, the problem we had, because everybody going to those schools, instead of going to Tennessee State and looking for an engineer where they got plenty of them with plenty of good grade point averages and so on, they would go to Georgia Tech or somewhere else and try to find a few Black students that was there, and everybody trying to vie for them. But it's a mentality thing. We have to change the people mentality on both sides, on the Black folks side and the white folks side, because we are all I'm assuming it's that Willie Lynch mentality that we've been taught over years and years that is hard to break.
You know, but I think that it's going to be, when you say hard to break, I think it's going to be very hard to break because you've got two perspectives. You've got the white side, the perspective that Blacks are doing well. Blacks are, they don't know, whites really don't know what they're complaining about. They had Obama, they have good jobs, they blah, that's the way whites think really right now. Where Blacks are saying, no, we don't have enough. There's discrimination, there's all kind of
redlining, everything,
injustices that whites don't see. So how we get past that? Because they're two different viewpoints, and both are standing fast to what is reality to them.
Yeah, but see,
Carol, what we did, what I like about the military is that I think the military got the right model. And you can't sell everybody, but what the military did, we ended up doing these race relations seminars and stuff like that. When you sit down and get people to start talking to one another, communication is probably the key, and kind of understand from both points of view, and understand, you got to understand why a person think the way they think. And somebody told me one time, and I never really thought about this from this perspective, but it makes sense, but it's stupid, but it makes sense to me. You think about this, from a white person's point of view, for an example, okay? And the person told me this one time, and I said, that sounds stupid, but it really makes sense a little bit. Just take for an example, right? Now, a mule in this country is just to work, do all the work horses and do everything you need to do with a mule, right? And then one day, and that's all you ever know about a mule. But one day they pass a law and say you have to treat a mule just like you treat any other human being, okay? But in your lifetime, from your perspective, just think about it for a minute. Could you ever accept that? Could you, if they pass a law today, you're accepting a mule, only thing you're ever gonna see is a mule. You're not gonna ever see, you're never gonna humanize it at all. That's the mentality. That's what people been taught all their lives, that we were pretty much mules,
That's
and
a
they
good
can't, in their
analogy.
lives, they can't accept us as an equal human being. And when you look at them, that's what they think about. You know,
Mhm.
and so, but you
That's
have
a
to turn
great
around
analogy.
that mentality in some kind of way. And education is, to me, the only way that you can get people to see different viewpoints and you know, just like the Trump supporters, and these QAnon people, they got the reason to believe what they believe, and that and got to be a legitimate reason in their mind why they believe this crap that they believe. But you got to sit down and understand. You got to sit down and talk with them to understand why they believe that. You don't have to believe, you don't have to agree with them, but at least understand where they're coming from. And then in order for you to kind of cut across where they're coming from, maybe you got to sit down and talk to them. They don't, in the same way the other side, they don't understand where we're coming from. If we
Right.
could just sit down and talk about those differences, and maybe we can come to some common ground. You're never going to be 100%, but maybe there's some common ground that we can make.
You know, Vern, I respect and appreciate all of what you just said, but I had an incident with a colleague maybe 5-6 years ago where he and I watched a video of a resource officer at a school take a 14-year-old black female up out of her desk and body slam her to the floor. And I could not help but to think, as I talked to this white colleague of mine, I asked him, how can you and I sit here and watch and see the same thing,
Right.
walk away with such different views and opinions of it? So I believe conversation is very important, but they will only always see us as not human, and that's why they can justify a resource officer taking a black female, young little old thin thing, and I'm talking about he body slammed her. The fury that was created in me and the calm and the excuse that he made for that resource officer told me that they don't understand, Brother Vern. It's because they don't want to understand. We are up. Go ahead, Jared.
I was just gonna say, when people see you as less than human, and they've been trained that way from the time they got on this, when they committed genocides against the Indians, when they brought you here to live 3 to 7 years and put you into slavery, saying that the average person wasn't gonna live but 3 to 7 years because of the work they had to do from the time they got off, as from the time they were 6 years old till they were grown. Even though we survived what they thought we would never survive, because no white man, no Indian, indigenous people, I say, because they don't want to be called Indian. They are indigenous people. That's what Columbus named them. But they couldn't survive that kind of abuse. So they committed genocides on them and used us to build their factories, to build make them cotton kings, to build, Washington, D.C., the country, all these skyscrapers and stuff, that free labor that we did for New York. And then when we had, Central Park was a black town. Most people don't know that. Central Park was a black town. They moved the people out of there so that they wouldn't have a town in New York City. So they moved them out. So,
but you know what's amazing to me when you talk about integration and like Vernon saying, they only see that mule, they'll never see you as anything else. Carlton, a while back, you stated that in when you're going to school, you were put in special ed. To me, I never forgot that, and it's been on my mind because they didn't see the greatness in Carlton. He didn't just become great overnight. He didn't become intellectual overnight. He had to have that in him from a little kid, but they didn't see that. I'm going with Vernon's analogy. They only saw the mule. You see, and that's what they do with all of our children. They cannot make you equal when they don't see you as a human. When they don't see you as smart as they are, as intelligent. You'll never be on the same level as they are in their minds. So I never forgot that. That's imprinted. How if they did it to Carlton, What about how many other children have they done that
Oh,
to?
millions.
That's outrageous. That's hurting.
Yeah.
Well, Carol, one of the things that people don't realize, and I think Doc Williams brought this up on some shows ago, that if you take the traditional bell curve, right? Well, 80% of it is, common is 80%, but you're always going to have a 10% deviation on one end or the other end. That's what people don't see. They don't see that deviation. You're going to have some people are going to be beyond that norm, and some are going to be below that norm. They couldn't tell the difference. Carlton obviously was beyond that norm, and they couldn't. But he didn't fit in that 80%. He fit in that 10% that they couldn't see.
They couldn't see it. And what does that tell us? The integration telling us about what they're doing to our children.
And
if we don't watch this, if we don't make them understand that our children have the same intelligence, what you call that? Not special ed, but gifted. How many black children doing this integration have been put in gifted classes? Again, I'm going back to this mule. I like that analogy. They're not going to put our kids in there and gifted, because you can't think just like they think. You can't think on a level. My dad, before he died, said that there's no quarterback for the black couldn't be a quarterback because they couldn't think like a white person. And he died thinking that way.
That's because somebody told him that. He believed that. He was told that enough that he actually believed that.
Right.
But there's no theory behind it, because
that's
what a lot of people hooked up in America now. They just like sheep. We're being led by other folks, and like the QAnon folks and Trump supporters and all of us Democrats that falling behind Joe Biden. What he says, we believe, and we don't question it. We don't research it. We just follow. And that's the problem. We need to do our own independent research and our own independent analysis and come up with our own decision on whether or not it's right or wrong.
And this is why it's so important. It's so important that we keep HBCUs alive. That we support HBCU colleges. The historic Black colleges is what 70% of all of your people with degrees or higher come out of HBCUs. Out of Black colleges, and many of us go to these white colleges. Many of us drop out in the second year or the first year because the burden of just being there and somebody trying to you got to deal with racism and discrimination and all of that while you there in that college. And many of them right now in those you see young Black people on TikTok talking about how they are being treated in these white colleges when they're roommates and all of that.
That's a big problem. When you have to have roommates in your dorm.
Somebody put some feces in your drink or something like that. You remember the girl that happened to? She in her toothpaste. Yeah, they would. I'm like,
a lot of things happen.
Yeah, just crazy.
But y'all, it's 9:50. We're gonna have to end it. It's time to end it. I know we could go to 9, but let's end it.
Hey, Carol, before you go, I know, and I hate to be neglected, but Howard been on here the whole time, and we hadn't recognized.
What's it? Is he on
here? Yeah, I see Howard on here. How are you?
Oh, well, Howard,
Mr. God.
You didn't say nothing. I didn't know he was on there.
Yeah, I see him on here.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I was muted out. I'm here, and everything is live, and there's so much discussion. Oh gosh, where do you start? We are the true humanitarians. The only way that American is what she is because of our humanity. And she won't get any better until she do right according to the Black man.
That's right.
So when we look at, there was so much good discussion going on. I'm full of it. Joe Biden, bless his heart, he's doing all these white folks let him do. Really, he's doing all the white folks will allow him to do. Now they looking at the 360,000, the 3 million. What is it? 360 million white folks. They ain't looking at the 40 million, 55 million Black folks. Okay. Let's put this in perspective.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So when you look at what he can do or what he has done, he can't do anymore. You know, it's amazing that he's gotten, you know, Kamala Harris on with him. You know, that's you know, he did enough when he did that. The white folks gonna shut him down. Okay, so you know, and with segregation. I went to school, to an all-white school when I was in the second grade. My family was chosen out of D.C. to help integrate the schools in Mississippi. Now you imagine that back in 668, and I'm in a white school. Okay, talking about segregation and integration. I was there in the second grade. I didn't experience racism like my sister and brother who was in the 10th and 11th grade who had to be pulled out that year. I went through the whole year. But I was so far advanced in my books that when I got back to the 4th grade, they wanted to promote me because of the fact that I had done this stuff that they was doing in the second grade. So my point is this: the white school was so advanced, and we were so far behind when it came to our books or when it came to teaching. That's what I learned from the integration, but not to say that, you know, integration was so much right, but it was for that moment. And I think we had to do what was done to bring about integration. Sure, we lost a lot. And we lost our stores. My dad had a dairy bar. We lost that. People, you know, when integration started, a lot of our black businesses fell off. You know, it wasn't no more black businesses. But when you look at it, you have to be concerned also with the fact that HBCUs, you know, came about in the late 1800s, 18, you know, we were stronger then than we are now.
Yeah.
Because we knew the importance of education. You're being recruited by these white universities to play ball and everything else that they're doing. The facilities are better and everything else, but we lose our identity.
Right.
Yeah. Again, I mean, the discussion is all over. I mean, you guys are spot on, and I really, you know, I'm sitting here absorbing what you're saying, all of it. You know.
Yeah. Next time, let us know you're on, Howard, because I didn't.
I think we have if they're not live, we have ours cut off. That's why you see it. I have to turn that back on.
Yeah.
So
He
that we
got to
can
jump in on this, so he
Yeah,
got to jump in. though.
Hey,
He got
people,
to
you
ask
gotta
Mayor
do
Henry Hawkins about waiting on an
hey,
open.
man. You guys were going at it. I didn't want to disturb nothing.
But I wanted to hear what you had to say because of being a black farmer. I was really interested in knowing about the segregation part of farming, being a black farmer, and then how integration changed things, if it changed things at all. So
most definitely. When we look at the black farmer, you know, we see him now. We farmed then, and we had more land than we do now, and so we've lost a lot more land because of the integration. I would say a lot more land. We're not farmers like we used to farm. Very few farmers now, because it was like, you know, you go to college, you know, you go and you leave the farm and you leave the land. You come back, there's no land because nobody was interested in it, because it had a taboo of a old farmer with a straw hat on and a pair of overalls. That wasn't a good image. So when we got educated, we left that behind. But yeah, it really affected us, and it still is. I mean, you know, when we look at farming now, who's feeding America? What are blacks doing? You know, we don't farm enough to feed a church almost.
Hey, Carol, that leads a segue into another conversation we can have when we losing our black institutions to white institutions, like Jet Magazine, BET, the black churches. Even now, we're beginning to lose the black churches. So maybe we can have a conversation on where's our black institutions going away? Why are they going over to integrate?
Yeah, why we lose?
That's a good show as well. Why are we losing, and how many are we losing? And that's an excellent show, because it's like the black community is dwindling down, and our power is being taken.
Depleted.
Right. We've got to do something.
Maybe that's the big picture, Carol. about assimilation. Maybe that's what it is. You know what assimilation. I'm gonna try to make this short, but you know what assimilation is, right?
Mhm.
Assimilation is if you think about you making a smoothie and you put all these different ingredients into a smoothie, right? They're all carrot. Let's say you put all these ingredients that you can identify. Okay,
Uh-huh.
bananas, apples, and all that kind of stuff. You put into a blender and you blend it, right? Then you can't recognize nothing. It comes out as one thing. That's what
Right.
assimilation is. But we don't want to necessarily be assimilation. We want to be able to identify because you with the richness of our culture, why can't we have indigenous people? Why can't we have Hispanic folks? Why can't we have Black folks? We all contribute to this country. So it's a big, I call it the salad bowl effect. We one big salad bowl. And that's what makes a salad great. It's a different ingredient. You can
Right,
see, taste,
absolutely.
and look at all those same ingredients in that one salad and makes it great. But I bet you put that salad into a blender, it won't be as good.
Remember when they used to say we don't see color? You remember when that was out? We don't see color and all that stuff there. And we said we want you to see color.
Right.
We want you to see that I'm a Black woman. We want you to see that Carlton and Snow and Vernon Jones are Black. We
That's
want
right.
you to see that. Don't say you don't. Right. Don't say you don't see color because that's not true. But anyway, you all, it's 9 o'clock. We're gonna have to go.
Let me say this.
Here we okay. I always
my
try to
recommended book, 2 of them, Slavery by Another Name. This is the re-enslavement of Black America from Civil War to World War II on until now. And then Came from Greatness, Arrived in Chains. I love this book, you know,
I like the title.
book, you know. And so I got 2 more, but we'll do them next week on Our Voices.
All right, you all will have our voices next week. And of course, we'll have a great topic for that. We hope to see our host again next week. Everybody
that was on
will be on. Thank you, Carlton. Thank you. Howard God.
Hey,
You know, thank you so much. And every time we call him, he said, "Yeah, I'm on the show." So you might be a regular. We always call Carlton, making sure he's going to be on. And we have our host Bill Snow and Vernon, who's on every Sunday night. Appreciate it.
To all the audience and the response of Brother Clark, all of y'all that responded to, and Lord bless and Pruitt, all of y'all, thank you for watching, and we will see you next Sunday on Our Voices, the People's Media.
Good night, you all.
Good night, everybody.
Guys, good night.
Yeah.
Great
Good
show.
night.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm trying to. Okay.